Okay, now we have, I hope I've not missed anyone because everyone else has been on the screen. We have another question or two that we would like to have the panelists discuss openly. And whilst these are questions, but these are questions that we want answers for. We want to be able to as a ministry, to address in some way in an effort to position us unique in God ministry to support the persons that we're called for. So I'm just gonna go right ahead and ask this question. As a person with a disability or the parent of a person with a disability, we know that you can face financial, emotional, and physical challenges, but also spiritual challenges. Based on your experience, what level of support, if any, have you received from faith-based organizations, and how effective has it been? I know this question speaks to persons with disabilities or parents of persons with disabilities, but I want to open it up to say, what level of support have you received? And for those persons who are in ministry and who are supporting and helping persons with disabilities, what do you currently do in that area to support persons with disabilities? And we're open, anyone can jump right in and discuss. At this point, it's a free flow of comments from the panelists and questions from those attending.
I would say, I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but here in the United States, most people that I encounter in disability ministry, it started because they had a family member with a disability and that they needed support in the church. And so they started that ministry, which I think is good and hard at the same time. It's good that the need is being met, but I think it's also hard that it has to be brought on by a family member or by the person themselves with a disability. And that is still, I mean, 15 years later since I've been doing this, it's still true. And so I do think the church as a whole probably ought to have a broader perspective when they look at who are they serving and how are they serving, because oftentimes it is the folks that are saying, hey, I cannot go to church unless someone will sit with my son, right, in class, or I can't go to church unless I know my child will be safe in your program. And so it is a little unfortunate that, a lot of times it's family members or individuals themselves who promote this, but I think any time we get church to think of a bigger perspective, I think that is good.
So once again, we hear the discussion of inclusion, making space for persons with disabilities. We heard that from Natalie as well. There's nothing in church for me, and that's a serious comment that should really impact believers everywhere with a heart for Christ and with a heart and a passion for discipleship, because there's nothing in church for me because you're not teaching the way I understand. You're not delivering the gospel message in a way that can captivate me and show me exactly what that means to me. So we're open. Please go right ahead and discuss. I see some of you in deep thought, and go right ahead. Let's talk about the topic at hand.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead, Imelda.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, April. If I can just jump in here, let's see, Pastor Murphy would have made mention of in terms of ministries in the church starting when the persons are connected. So at my church, we were one of the first churches on the island to start a ministry for hearing impaired persons in Barbados. And that happened because we became friends with a hearing impaired young man. Actually, years later, he has now gone on to be a pastor. But we were all teens and young adults together, and he became our friend. And we realized that there was definitely a need for persons to interpret what was happening in the service. And out of that, that was birthed and started in because we saw the need. So there was not a playbook to go by. So we basically took it one step at a time, and with the support of our pastors and God's leading, things just came together, and we were able to create that ministry or that service to our hearing impaired in the community. And that has been the springboard for many other churches and groups and organizations to start to reach out to that population of persons. But before that, you kind of went to church and hoped for the best. So they didn't fully have the, they didn't have the full experience of fully interacting. So if you are not hearing very well, and you have to try to lip read what is happening on the platform, that is very, very difficult, as opposed to if there's someone there interpreting in sign language for you. And so I do agree that a lot of the time, persons or ministries will come about, or an intervention will come about because there is a connection. Over my years in special education, I've realized that some of the teachers that I meet, they are often the siblings of persons with disabilities, and they naturally gravitate towards special education or working in groups with persons with special needs. So it's like out of that need, out of that connection with the other person, that a lot of this happens. Well, I can say that for here in the island of Barbados. Yeah.
If I may come in now, I think the mic is.
You're muted, Ear. Oh, go ahead, Nat.
Okay, just one second, Natalie. I asked, just one second. I think we have Minister April Johnson and we have Jerry, and then we will go with Natalie, if that's okay. Yeah.
So in my experience with children's ministry, we did not, going back, 20, 25 years, we didn't provide a lot of support. We had children that we welcomed into our service, but we expected them to flow and function in a normal children's ministry class. And for our children's church classes for ages 7 through 11, we would have anywhere from 80 to 120 kids in that class. So it could be a very overwhelming environment, particularly for, an autistic child who has, sensory challenges or what have you. But we didn't know any different. We just knew that, if this is a child, we welcome them into our classroom. So one of the things that I think that has to happen in the body of Christ is this can't just be a children's ministry challenge. This has to be something that's taken on by the pastoral department, so that we're looking at it, not just focusing solely on, can this child sit through a children's church classroom, or do I need to open a separate children's church classroom for children with special needs? But this has to be something that is looked at and is embraced by the entire ministry team, because although we may, minister directly to the children, there are more elements that we can't bear the weight of it. It has to be the pastoral staff that's assisting with the parents, and then us as a ministry team looking at how can we best support this entire family. Because the challenge that we had was we barely had the staff for our children's church classrooms, so when you started adding on, children with special needs, it became overwhelming, so if you have 5 people to accommodate 120 kids, and then you add on 3 with special needs, some that had, challenges communicating verbally, or they had sensory challenges where they couldn't, deal with the light changes or the sound changes, it was overwhelming. But when I look at in our subsequent years, one of the challenges that, I realized is that when we moved into our new building, and this is about 8 years ago, we did not consider what a special needs person would need to readily enter our building and into our service. So when I consider the restrooms, or I consider the classrooms, or I consider the size of the classrooms, none of that was considered, so that's one of the drawbacks where, as the children's minister, I'm always championing, the needs of the children. Hey, we need a bigger classroom. But, in terms of the layout of the building and the space that was provided, it just it wasn't a consideration, and it wasn't something that, me adding the suggestion was able to change. So I think that this has to go beyond the 4 walls of the children's pastor, and it really has to be something that impacts the senior pastor and the ministry team, so that the necessary resources can be employed into this area. It's one thing when you have a children's pastor who's, championing for new chairs, or we need puppets, or we need resources, like, oh, that's children's church. We can't give you everything. Maybe parents can donate it. But it's another thing when you have a pastor, a senior leader, ministry leader that really has a heart and wants to reach out, to all members of, the body of Christ, or prospective members, the lost. You have to have that heart and be willing to make the necessary financial adjustments, physical adjustments, whatever is necessary. We have to be willing to do that. And it's not until, somebody has to go in and say, listen, we are missing out on a huge, population of people, and we're guilty of having their blood on our hands.
Wow, indeed. Jerry, do you want to come in and say something at this time?
Yeah, am I muted?
No, you're good. We can hear you.
Okay.
And we can see you.
All right. That's back over to me, right? So, well, I'll say add a bit to what Imelda has already said, because Imelda is part of our church group, and she was an added member, not a founding member. Nevertheless, she's been a great support to our team, and we've had a number of persons that had become involved, and then over the years, many have dropped out, but we've continued. We've been faithful to the cause, and I am really, I'm impressed, I'm appreciative for all that has happened. I truly enjoy ministering to the hearing impaired. I strongly believe it's a developed skill, somewhat of a gifting, a God-given gift. And to be able to sign and to interpret for the hearing impaired or disabled is, I think, is truly a blessing. And I truly appreciate and enjoy when I'm interpreting. What I do is I will kind of scan my audience, and it's heartwarming and encouraging when you see the responses from a person or persons, that, they will either give you a yes or a nod, and in acknowledgement that, yes, they understand what you're saying and you're saying. And so that you're getting through, you're touching, you're ministering, to their needs, and you're helping, as it were, to meet that requirement that there, as like all of us, we all have a need, a spiritual need. And so, to be able to connect with a hearing impaired person and, to, as it were, introduce to them Jesus that's fantastic.
Praise God.
Yeah. I kind of had shared, so I don't know if, but let me say it late, but apologies for being late and arriving. I actually, I went out early and I was exposed to the sun, came home, and I kind of dozed off and just woke up and said, oops, I missed the meeting. I just jumped right in. So my apologies for arriving late. And so I don't know if anything has been shared about me, or if Andrea, you're going to be sharing a little bit about my involvement. But again, as I said, Imelda kind of shared a bit about us as it were, as a team, Abundant Life Assembly, where we were are, as it were, the forerunners in deaf ministry. And so so I would again maybe encourage persons to to get involved. I myself was never, as it were, exposed to a person with hearing impairment prior to that first evening. And so for me, it was not because of a family member or anything like that, but the interest just grew with every Saturday that we met. Like it became a greater interest, and it just grew and grew and grew. And I truly, as I said before, enjoy signing and communicating with hearing impaired and deaf persons.
Excellent. We are going to run along quickly. I'll share a little bit about Jerry after, but the questions are coming in. Natalie, I'm going to open the mic to you now, and there is one question in the chat that I would like us to speak to as well. Go right ahead, Natalie.
Okay, so it's dyslexic that I have, and on a what I can say, since I started to go to People's Cathedral and I got baptized, it was something was missing. I didn't know what it was, but something was missing. And I asked God to give me, give me whatever it is that missing, help me to get it sorted out. And I was flipping through my YouTube and, just going through it. And I saw something and I clicked on it. It was voice activated. It was the Bible app. And then it had different things on it. And I was doing some research and I went and asked some questions. And I asked a church member, not from People's Cathedral, from a different church. And the insight was really good. And I was like, you know what? Maybe, Father Lord, you are maybe telling me something. If you are, please do, just tell me what you want me to do. And I started getting involved with the 7 Days Adventist. And the Bible was downloaded. They have a quarterly. Same thing that People's Cathedral do, but it's just they go into more details. The Bible app was so great. And it was made for people that had challenges reading. It was for children, and it was for people that needed to hearing impaired. And they had an app for every disability, knowing to man to get to the Bible. And I was like, Father Lord, maybe this is the church that you want me to be at. Since I was there, I'm not telling you a lie, I learned so much about myself, so much that I have. When you say not turn to whatever, I turn to the pages. I'm still learning. But what I'm saying is that because I have that faith that I wanted to learn so much, and God see that he had something to work with, and he worked with me, and I'm still saying God is still working with me. It is way, way better. All I'm asking is for the churches to get apps. You got the Bible app. You could, do Bible studies on apps, voice activated, sign language aid, you got so much things you can do. That's sometimes I think that you are very laid back. We are very laid back. We say we're going to do something, but then we don't do it. They take the initiative and they went over and about. They had apps that you can download anything and you can voice activate it. And I can just press on it and I can get any part of the Bible, and it goes into the detail from the King James to the NIV to the to different apps that you can it makes it more easier, because sometimes the Bible, when you read the Bible, it can sound like, with all the different things like Father Lord, if you do not welcome the Holy Spirit right off the bat, you can't learn nothing.
Thank you so much.
Spirit. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Natalie. Kurt, I understand that you may be leaving us a little early, so I'm going to give you the opportunity now. If there's anything you do want to share around the topic, have you received adequate financial, emotional, and spiritual support as a parent with a child who has a disability from the church, from believers generally?
Well, I can say that I think we here in Barbados, definitely, I can only speak for my country, our country. Those who here that are Barbadians, I heard some of the others spoke about America, and what they're doing there in terms of the disability and assisting them and helping them. I think is we can learn from that, from some of their examples, but because I believe, right, that we need to get more educated on it here. We need to educate our people in a general sense, and church folk. I don't think that this topic is something that is raised that often in churches, but it's something that we need to address more and see how we can, make provisions, make help available more for the disabled, because it's not just about ministering. We want to be on holistic. We are ministering. I think that is lacking, and we need to come together and look at truly working towards making suitable ways and means available that we can assist our special needs people and those who are the caretakers of special needs individuals, because we all need help. Definitely, you need assistance, and I think sometimes that burden can be sometimes become overwhelming in trying to take care of a disabled person. And I see too many disabled people just there alone, struggling and so on the streets and so on, right here in our country. But we need as a society, we need as a church to do more towards that in educating our people and really getting more hands on board in assisting and helping in every way possible that is needed, because help is needed in every way possible. Emotionally, there's domestic help that is needed. financial help in every area. So we got to work more on that. And I'm willing to be there as one who would join the forces in that effort, because they need more. I recognize that as a caretaker of and the father of a disabled person. I had to carry the whole weight, I believe, on my shoulder. I don't know, because we come along in Barbados, it sort of got too much a stigma to it. Where we come along in Barbados, like feeling that if you should keep it to yourself, keep it down, don't really let anybody know about it and so on. So I try to keep it as something shadowy, but I think that it's something we need to come more open with now than ever, that we can really address this in the appropriate ways that it need to be addressed. Thank you all. I have to go now, so I appreciate the time being here and hearing from all the others. God bless everyone as you continue.
God bless you as well, Pastor Bino. Thank you for joining us. And I'm sure that we will hear from you much more at different times. We have Imelda's hand is raised, and Joy, I'm seeing you raise your hand as well. So I'm going to let Imelda speak first. And just let me caution you, please make your comments as concise as possible so that we can cover the material and everyone can get the opportunity to share. Thank you.
Mine is going to be quick. I just wanted to ask Natalie, what were the kind of Bible apps that they were using? She doesn't have to give me that answer now. She could probably put it in
Imelda, I'm typing it in the chat.
I'm typing it in the chat now. Information.
That would have been my question as well.
Yeah, like I'm interested.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, really?
Yeah.
I'm open.
Angelica said 7 days of Adventists have a lot of quarterlies, because the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, and it based it on the Bible. But Joyanne have it. I believe you can maybe type it in and you will get it.
Okay. Okay, Joy, you also wanted to say something. Thank you.
Allow Murphy to speak, and then let me type this in, please. Allow Pastor Murphy. I believe her hand was up.
Oh, no, I was just giving Kurt a little wave when he left.
So you didn't get away, Joy. Yes, go right ahead and share. Oh, you're not ready to share as yet, Joy? Yeah, you're muted.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to multitask, which is not always what I'm good at.
Okay.
Okay, so I've typed it in the chat so you can see.
Press send.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to say something before Kurt left. Kurt's daughter is one of my young people. Me and Natalie work together. And I have seen her grow tremendously. She is, for sure, one thing I can say about Kurt, he has passed his heart for God onto her. She's a prayer warrior. She knows how to pray. She knows how to touch the heart of God, and she loves God. And that's one thing I love about her. She loves God. And Kurt and his wife have passed that onto her in a tremendous way. And I want to thank Kurt, and allow you to know what a fantastic job he has done in that area.
Oh.
But okay. I've been listening, and I have been listening to everything everyone has said, and what Pastor Murphy said about the states and being in that most of the places are started by persons who have a child or person with a disability, and they start in the ministry. In Barbados, it's very different. as Jerry said, we saw a need, we met a person with disability, we were in church, you saw a need, you got to know them, and you started a ministry. My ministry in Learning Sign Language has come under Imelda and Jerry. I've learned a lot from them. They taught me, you know, a lot in terms of dealing with the deaf and the sign language, and me going on to learn a lot more educational wise about deaf and deafness and the need for deaf. The first person I met with a disability was a deaf young man. That was, and I told y'all last week, at 15 years old. And meeting him inspired me to start learning sign language, and even to go to my graduation class at 15 and ask them, can I sing the graduation song? And they were more than willing to do that. And leaving that area, God just decided to take me into the arena of special needs. There's never been anything else really in my life but special needs. That's been my call, and it has not been an easy call, because you live and you see the need and you desire to fill the need. Even in one experience in Barbados, we're very separate. We are growing now. We are becoming aware now of disability, the need, and the government is pouring resources into the arena and the area of disability and helping persons with disabilities and providing for them and opening up doors and socially, economically. But that has taken us a long journey. And I remember sitting in a bus with this grandmother with a child with Down syndrome. And naturally, knowing me, I looked across and I smiled at him and I shook. Oh man, that lady unburdened her heart right there, because that is the first time that she experienced a welcoming environment. And she just went on to tell me how it was like, and how people look at it strange, and how heavy it is. And, you know, she was so happy that I smiled, and all it took was a smile and a shake at that young man. And she carried that load so heavy on her that just that caused her to unburden herself and feel like she could breathe and feel like she could smile and allow someone into her world without hurting this young man that she loved dearly. So, Andrew, you were saying something?
No, well, I thought you were finished. I wanted to go on to ask another question, but please continue. I'm sorry.
So the heart for this ministry, it came straight from God. It is where God has placed me, because I see the need, I see the heart, and I understand, well, I can't even understand, but a bit, that he desires to love and include and bless. And let me tell you, when you are blessed, I mean, he blesses, but when you are blessed by a person who has a disability, is way beyond what you can imagine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much, Joy. Thank you. I want to get to this question who was put in the chat by Pauleska Christina, who is in Curacao. She said that she has 2 nephews, both with mental disabilities. Most of the time, people say that it is not the will of God for a child to be born with disability. They feel rejected, and the parents feel left alone by God, that God doesn't care about them. And she's asking the question, how can I encourage the parents? She went on to say, to ask, how can you teach other children to be kind to them and love them the way they are? Most of the other kids do not understand that they're different and that they need to be loved as well. So quickly, how can we encourage parents who are feeling the weight, as you mentioned, Joy, of caring for children with disabilities? And then how can we sensitize children to be kinder, to be more loving and more accepting of persons with disabilities? And that question is open to everyone.
I will attempt to start this one. I do think there's a lot of shame that can come through. When depending on your history, your experience, your culture, even about disability and the way that disability is understood and talked about, and how some in that shame, it's interpreted that somehow this is like less, like you are less to God because of this, or your family is less to God because of this, or it's like some generational, kind of thing, kind of sin or something like that. And I think if you look at the Bible and you look at the biblical narrative, right, of Jesus and of healing and of his interactions with people who society had put as outcasts, right? I think if we looked at that, we would see like, oh, actually, it is us, right? We are the ones that have twisted that biblical narrative, right? We are the ones that have twisted that. That was not God's intent. And, after the fall, right, of Adam and Eve, the world was broken, right? And part of the brokenness of the world, right, is brokenness of all of us, right? And I think, I do think there's a lot that we have done as humanity to kind of twist this, to say, oh, well, you're more, you're less, or whatever. And I think disability is an easy way for us to distinguish ourselves from other people. But that's just not right. So I think it's us looking at the Bible and saying, like, okay, what is actually true, right? How does God interact with humanity, right? How does Jesus interact on this earth, right? How did he interact, and what was his response to people who are pushed out, who are outcast, right? And he didn't ignore them, right? So I think that's something to look at.
So for appearance, and Pastor Murphy, I know this sits with you as well. What have you done outside of serving God? It's almost impossible to look at our lives outside of serving God. But we get up every day, we wake up, we brush our teeth, we dress, we go to work. So there's that very practical side of us. How do you, as a parent, with 3 children with a disability, how do you really cope with your 3 little babies? How then, and this may be a little sensitive, and having had, I'm not sure if your children are adopted or if they're birth children, but they're yours anyhow. Having had 1 baby with a disability, a second baby with a disability, a 3rd baby with a disability, and people are wondering, what's going on here? We know that will be the narrative, and I'm hoping that I'm not being insensitive, but I do want to drill down a little more for persons who are on this call and who will hear this recording. How then do you, as a loving mother, balance the narrative around your children?
Oh no, that's a great question, and I'm here for that one. So I think there's a few things, right? I think part of it is you could only live one moment at a time, right? And so you live the moment that you're in. And I when anyone becomes a parent, I go to baby showers with my friends and all these things, and you get all these clothes that they're probably not going to wear, and you get all these things, right? And you think about, like, what might my life become, right? What might this child become, right? But we only are living in that moment, right? We can only live in the moment that we're in. So I can say in the morning, right, we wake up, okay, this is the moment we're living in, and this is what we're doing in this moment, right? And if you do moment by moment by moment by moment, suddenly you have a whole day done, right? And then you do moment by moment by moment, you have a whole week, a whole month, right? A whole year. My son is going to be 12, right? So you got a whole dozen years, right? And I think that kind of to the question earlier about the supports from church, from faith-based entities, right? We have not done it by ourselves. My husband and I have not parented these children by ourselves, not at all. We've had some great people come alongside us who also are living moment by moment, right? They're present with us in our current moment. And there are some moments of time where I don't think about disability at all, because we're just going about. And then there are moments of time where I go, oh, we are we are doing our part for disability awareness in California right now, like my family, right? Like we are doing our part, right? So I think it's not doing it alone, doing the moment by moment. And also there has to be kind of this conscious effort to say, okay, God, I might not know the whole plan and the whole story or the whole reason for anything, but God does, right? And so I think all these things, it's we call it extreme parenting. You know, it's like parenting plus, where you are in this moment of you're constantly reorienting yourself, right, to God. So so that was a great question, and I'm here for that. So
Wow, thank you so much. That was a great answer. Let me just say, because and I'm sure that will mean something different in any and every other home with persons with disabilities. But thank you so very much, because the simplicity of living helps, and that I really like that. That's a strong tip. Living moment by moment, and I think we need to do that. Whether or not you have children with disabilities is so significant. Sometimes we want to gather our whole lives into 1 hour and get the beginning, the middle, and the end all at that, and that's where stress definitely comes in.